Whenever you want, the floor is yours. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating in this workshop about local economic development, sustainability, and gender equality in the recovery of the COVID crisis. Before we start, I want to remind you to have your mics off. You will be able to use the chat, though, and you can choose whatever translation you may like. In the bottom, you find in the lower bar, and you have the options to choose between French, English, and Spanish. Without further ado, I will welcome Ms. Marquez. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ana, for your presentation. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to everyone who's participating in this workshop so that we want to welcome you to this activity that we are developing within the Forum of Local Economic Development, so as to start finding a way to incorporate this integration and different actions towards the recuperation and the economic recovery that has been generated by the pandemic. In my presentation, and from my position in the different organizations that I work with, we want to thank you for creating the UNDP and the Division for Latin America and their leader, and all institutions that are part of this initiative. This initiative is fundamented and fits from different actors at the regional and local level who are committed to make this development more inclusive and egalitarian. The Canadian Federation of Municipalities, the Cooperative Center of Sweden, the Research Center of Florence, and the Basque Institute of Women in the Basque Country. The Delphi Consortium defines that local development in gender perspectives from our union and the network of municipalities and all different local territories are the participants who make evident all the vulnerabilities that many of our populations face. But at the same time, the municipality is the one who has to articulate commitments towards more inclusive and egalitarian cities. Cities, municipalities, and local governments have been on the front line to fight this pandemic. Even before the problems that we faced before the crisis, both men and women were facing a lot of difficulty in the work market. There's no doubt that ignoring the impact of gender resulting from the crisis will, of course, aggravate their situation. The crisis is disproportionately affecting women workers. There's more women than men directly harsh in their work. Even different people from the health sector are many jobs that are also performed by women and are even worsening this inequality situation. That's why we have to improve and strengthen local measures so that they can take the lead in these different initiatives so as to be able to create substantive equality, mainly from the local level. Women must be at the center of economic recovery mainly also in the scenery of the post-COVID pandemic. We need to share these experiences so that we can take the experience of successful local companies and also deepen the debate of local economic development with a gender perspective. Also speaking about the different consequences that the pandemic had, the main point that we will see today is to see the different political lines and policies that can really contribute to women empowerment and economic independency. We hope that you take as much as possible from this experience, and we warmly welcome all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these opening words. We will start with the panel on territories and gender equality for the recovery of the pandemic post-COVID. We are joined by Guillermina Martín, Aroa Santiago, and Olga Segovia, researcher at SUR and member of the Corporation for Social Studies and Education of Chile. I'm sorry, we will ask you to share your cameras so that we can make a picture of all of us here together during the workshop. Thank you very much. We will take a picture to put it on social media. So if everyone can join, I think everyone's here already.
Una, dos y tres.
1, 2, 3.
Muchísimas gracias.
Bueno, pues ahora sí.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Perfecto. Ahora sí damos
Now,
comienzo
yes,
a esta sección. Guillermina Martín,
perfect.
te doy el paso.
We can start with this section. Guillermina Martín, it's your turn. Thank you very much, Ana, for your presentation, and I greet everyone, all my colleagues from the Delgen Consortium, particularly to the universities and all the people that are invited today from PNUD to the Caribbean, from the gender sector. It's a pleasure to be in this forum for the Local Economic Development Forum. I will share my presentation because I want to provide a brief presentation. Then I have a local colleague, Arroba Santiago, who is also to present something more in a global sector. Can you confirm that you see my screen? As it was said before, and during all this year and last year, the COVID impact has been really unusual. It's a crisis that has not seen before, and it has had an impact in all the development and sustainable areas, in particular in the human development. It's the first time that the human development has decreased. It is a multidimensional crisis, social, economical crisis, also of care of people who work within the gender area, and also in the educational level, and also in the politics. The effects, as I said, have no records similar in the past, and there is no clear sustainability approach. As Larissa said, the impact in our labor force, in women in our region, has been terrible. During 2020, the contraction of the participation work at women was even bigger than the men. But the problem is that we spent 3 years in Latin America to reach those percentages, those 10 percentages. As you can see in the graph, in 1990, we were in the 40%. We reached in the 51. It took us almost 3 years, and now we came back down at 10.4%. So that means that, unfortunately, and I hope this is not like this, we will have to wait another 9 years or 30 years to get to a minimal gap in the participation. These numbers demand an answer, which are very important from the government, and it's one of the main axles for the recovery. If we analyze more the participation of and the role of the women, we can analyze what happens in the workforce when women have children younger than 6 years old. The latest data that were in May this year, we can see Bolivia and Argentina, and how this has impacted in Bolivia in the women that are married with children younger than 6 years old. If you can see the blue line, and with the latest in Argentina, how it has impacted in women that at home and the ones that are married and have children less than 6 years. Every woman that goes out of the market labor force, it's really an impact not only for herself but also for the country and our communities. In that sense, one central topic in this work, and we will see this during all the session today, is a reflection that we hope to be creative and very consensual between all the participants, has to do with the impact in the domestic work, work that has no money. With all our efforts that we are doing with all the people to be locked down and to have a distance, and also in the countries, we need to think about politics in which the domestic work and the care are the central politics of the governments. Women nowadays cannot have under our shoulders all the work from the home and the community's works. Another topic has to do with the access and the digital gaps, and has to do, of course, with a difficulty to access internet, not only the access in itself, but I want to debate as well some elements that will be discussed later on. We have to think about the control and the usage of the technological processes, how women really start to be part of this change and this transformation in the digital area. In this sense, the impact of the lockdown and all the other impacts of the pandemic, there was a lot of violence against women and girls, and also an increase in the calls in all the words, the hotlines, not only because it increased, because it was more complex as regards at the reality in the countries. This violence against women and children, and also the chronic violence in many countries in our region, violence associated with organized violence and immigration and all of that. We have to deepen this outlook as regards the violence against women in particularly and girls, and also against young people. In this sense, it's very important to make advances on this. And lastly, we have the necessity to think in a multidimensional way. Here you can see how we made efforts on working. We know it's very difficult, but we cannot think of this without the sectors. The pandemic has made the necessity to think in a whole way. We have the inequality in gender. We measure education and health and the resources, accessibility, the rural spaces and community spaces, those demanding that. Another element to think about the multidimension. Then also the food security, the care, the agency, connectivity, internet usage, education. Here we have a global dashboard in which we have all the data. We need to deepen this analysis and improve the data from the different countries. So we invite you to have these effects of the autonomy of the ladies can be thought of without taking into the perspective the human development. And then We promote to have a global answer, but in governance, not only to recognize and participate, but also to empower, not only to talk about participation, and of course, in the UN organizations, we work with the parity and the need to discuss the gender agenda and to be present. The social protection, of course, to promote universal answers with incomes, education, university for all of us, education, health, but also the care as a right, and the fourth, protection in the social area. A green economy, we can do that, but something that does not forget the inequality gaps that already exist. A green economy that highlights the work that many women do in their local spaces, also in the rural and community spaces, and to promote not only in the value chains, but also with the small and medium-sized companies, and also digital and transformation and control of the technologies. I give the floor to Alora, and I congratulate all of the institutions and all the mayors that we are going to meet today, and we will know about their experiences and the effort they make. Sometimes is overhuman, but of course, this crisis uh, provided women to have a very important role to solve everything. So we hope we continue having a great session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Isarmina. It's a pleasure for me to be able to be here and to learn from all the experiences that are going to be shared today. Of course, it's going to be a very enrichful session. On my part, I would only like to add what Guillermina mentioned with the question. Guillermina has shown you what are the risks that we are facing. This is the importance of the problems we are facing, but how are the governments reacting to this? I'm going to share my screen. I only have 2 slides. The pandemic has shown us how fragile the equality gender advances have been. So local and governments must answer a very intentionally way. What you can see on the screen is the tracking of the gender measures from COVID, especially for the women, and with collaboration with some universities, started last year and supervises many politics globally and by the region. We have different ways of selecting the data, so I encourage you to look for it. If you look at Google, it will appear there, and you can touch the buttons and you can explore all the information or all the data. So I will put the web address in the chat. These are national measures, but many of them will be developed, implemented, or they will affect in a local way. So I think it's important not to forget this and to take it into account. This relationship between the national and the local politics, apart from what was mentioned before, the local governments are the ones that are in front of the pandemic on the first line with the communities. Apart from the fact that the women were the most affected because they have lost their jobs or in comparison to the men, in this tracker we can see that only the 13% of the measures taken are directed to the economic security of the women. And at the same time, we can see, even though the gravity of the care crisis, only some percentage is directed to the non-remunerative work. We know it's not enough. But the most alarming data is the fact that 32 countries, which is the 50% of the ones analyzed, does not have any answer from the politics. So at the same time, we have also monitored the participation of women in the committees as a response for COVID, technical and political decisions. And the 221 work groups that we have examined in 137 countries, women represent, on average, only the 24% of these members of work groups. And in the 12% of these groups, there is not even one woman. For that reason, we know that if women are not in the decision role posts, of course, the decisions taken by the governments are not taking into account their necessities. We also have some hope and good practices. We have discovered some of them that you can be inspired by. And some countries, in fact, are taking into account very really the increase in gender violence during the pandemic. And some countries have applied at least one measure for this. And 42 countries have demonstrated a holistic response. That is, they are directed to the women's security and to respond to the violence against women, and also taking care of them. And so far, we have time to improve things. And we know that the governments, the local governments, are key to transform society and economies from the base. Some ideas in this sense have to do with that it's important to concentrate in a parallel way in the short and in the long term to respond to the emergency, but also in the long term to transform the societies so that they can be more resilient to the future. In the short term, to guarantee the economic necessities of women, the care measures, and to face the gender violence. But we can also do it in a way in which we can transform the social structures and economic structures which were the generators of these inequalities. And as Guillermina mentioned, to emphasize on the power. And for this reason, I am very happy, and this is a pre-launch. Tomorrow, we're going to launch this manual for local people to help in the perspective of the general development. We did it with it's been I work with many works and colleagues from New York and Brussels, and also from regional colleagues. And we hope that it's ready in Spanish soon, or in French, or in other languages. Tomorrow it's going to be in English, and it covers all the process of planning and the local economic, for of course, the recovery of the economical situation, from the analysis to the planning and the funding. It is based on a global work that we have been doing for 5 years for the development of the inclusive development, in which we also have a measurement packet with the governments from the local area, training, also ideas for funding, plus all the tools that already exist. If you're interested in this, don't doubt in contacting us so we can share you the tools or provide you more support for this. This manual is a practical manual. It's very simple with a lot of pieces of advice. And the idea is to provide these ideas that maybe you had on your mind, or maybe you didn't, and it can be really helpful so that this local development and the recovery of the local economy can be more directed to the gender equality. So I wish I can listen to the rest of the colleagues. Thank you very much. So now,
Thank you. Now we will give the floor to our next speaker. Olga?
Hola, ¿qué tal? Quiero compartir la pantalla.
I think maybe Aroa needs to stop sharing her screen because I need to share mine. It's a pleasure to be with you today. To be honest, this is a perfect opportunity to share some experiences and projections. So let's start. I think I'm not able to share my screen. Can I be enabled, please, to share my screen? You are now ready to do that. Oh, I think it's not working.
No puedo.
No, I can't.
puedes ayudar, por favor?
I don't know.
Sí.
Can I get some help, please?
¿Podemos pasar nosotros tu presentación?
Pero tendría que
Yes.
mandártela.
Sí.
If you want, we can share your presentation. Well, I would need to send it to
Quiero
you.
hacerlo yo, pero me pueden ayudar a compartirla.
You can send it to me, I'll share it, and if you want to do it, maybe if you can help me share it. It says one participant can share the screen 8 at a time. That's the message that I get.
Por favor, querida.
It's not showing.
A ver.
Do you want to try
No,
again,
porque dice
Olga?
un participante, pues dice varios participantes, pero no me dice la opción directamente.
Creo que debe apretar el
Ok.
icono y no la flechita.
No, there's no direct
¿Cómo?
option to do it.
Tienes razón.
I think you need to press the icon and not the
Perfecto, ahora
arrow.
sí. Ahora está mejor.
Oh, you're right.
Bueno, yo quisiera,
Perfect.
en primer lugar,
Now
como
we are
les
ready.
estaba muy contenta de poder compartir algunas experiencias, algunas
Well, I would like to
situaciones. Y como
first
decía Guillermina, como
say that I'm very happy to be able to share this reflection and experiences with you. And as Guillermina and Aroa were saying, we are in a very hard context right now that has really deepened existing inequalities. So we need to make progress and strengthen rights for women, both in the mid and the long term. Also within a framework that is in line with these development goals that we have been speaking about during the whole day. The worsening of the all gender indicators in informal work and everything now is getting worsened for women and children, depending also on their race, their sexual orientation, their indigenous origin, people who have disabilities. There's actually an increase in all inequalities. And if we want to face this crisis without leaving anyone behind, we need to incorporate gender perspectives in all our policies to be able to reactivate economic development at the local level. From this viewpoint, I want to highlight some areas that I think are strategic to really make progress in helping women in this process of reactivation of the economy. First, I want to talk about social corresponsability and gender. This is fundamental to be really able to make progress towards greater equality. As it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of data indicating that gender inequality and the sexual division of work is one of the nodes affecting this level of inequality. The crisis, because of the pandemic, has also strengthened and made visible how this system and current way of organizing is actually unsustainable. Women all over the world take more than 76% of care work in comparison with men. This situation has been worsened because of the lockdown, because of social distancing and the lack of assistance to schools. All has contributed to worsen this situation. There are multiple aspects to take into account: labor participation, the increase in poverty, also the need to develop human talent, economy. Some new data, very punctual and very precise. For example, in Colombia, more than 39% of women said to be overcharged with domestic chores. In Argentina, 51% of women over 18 indicating that they were overcharged with work at home. And in Uruguay, 20% of women also declared to be feeling really overloaded with work during the pandemic, in comparison with only 4% of the men. Some preliminary surveys with women in Bangladesh, Philippines, the Maldives, and Pakistan also demonstrated that unpaid work was increased and is also consuming more of their time. What can we do to be able to respond beyond the emergency and the crisis? New normality implies different changes in schooling and work, which will continue to be increased in its severity, and we will be living this crisis in new ways with a reorganization of productive and reproductive work. So how we can organize this local, also local and global economy, integrating a more comprehensive viewpoint oriented to unpaid work. It's very necessary that we have some synergy among all these different policies. We cannot approach this through a different external viewpoint. We need to be really in the field. We need to recognize, redistribute, and reduce this care work. This needs to be a responsibility that we all have, the private sector, the state, both men and women. We need to promote public policies, and how can we do this? What are the great lines of thought that can really contribute for the population to be able to have the right and take care of these with the challenges that are imposed? Because this has to do with a change in paradigm, changes in politics. First, I would like to say we need to defeminize gender roles and include women in social protection and everyone who performs care works. In this economy, we need to be very aware and eager to show what is that we can contribute with. We need to democratize, redistribute the offer of care work within the state, the market, community, and family, and promote a balance between men and women in every home. Also, the marketing of this concept, something that needs to be addressed both from local and regional levels. When we think about services, urban services, how can we use them to reduce social inequality? This is very important also in cities when we speak about urban services and how these different services are really giving a different level of support to daily life. In such a complex scenery, it's imperative that we include a look on problems that can recognize care economy, which is a concept, a comprehensive concept, including all kinds of care works performed, both paid and unpaid, and include them in a labor reformation. The strategy of care economy is very important because it can help really not to repeat and to go back on the progress already made. This very severe drawback that we have experienced needs to be really addressed. In recent studies by CEPAL, it's been demonstrated that the resources destined to care economy are more like an investment in this sense. And the resources destined to care public policies have been affected also by the sector of a more traditional-like approach. It's also imperative that we use digital platforms to improve equal participation. It's really an opportunity, as well as it presents new challenges to reach gender equality and widen women economic autonomy. Another important aspect is that poverty is threatening the amount of opportunities that women can access to. And all these gaps, very complex as they are, can be improved with digitalization, but at the same time, there are many people who have no access to this digitalization.
Realmente, por lo tanto, uno de los grandes desafíos para el futuro es que ante la velocidad del cambio
one of the greatest challenges that we have in the future is that the speed required by these changes faces with a very important transformation. There's a problem here that we think it's crucial to bring to the table in such a context of uncertainty. What can we take from teleworking? It's important to have flexibility, but at the same time, how can we solve traditional problems associated with working at home, such as isolation, indecent working conditions, difficulties to be organized and represented by unions, and also the lack of regulation of labor? It's important that we help women to have access to all the benefits that they have a right to. All the challenges presented by this technological transformation can be helpful in reducing gender gaps, but at the same time can be a drawback, so it needs to be addressed with a lot of seriousness to really be able to solve the situation. I would like to highlight a point that I think is fundamental and crucial. These are areas that are linked. As many of our colleagues just said, having a comprehensive look, a look that can help us really relate one thing with the other.
En el mercado laboral y en la amplitud de su autonomía económica, desde la oferta y obstáculos, restricciones, el acceso al crédito, por ejemplo, que tiene que ver con garantías y bienes que las mujeres muchas veces no disponen, no tienen acceso a la propiedad de la tierra, hay desigualdad en la implicancia.
They don't have access to the land, property, inequality, a series of rights and bureaucracy that they have to do, and they are really in unequal conditions. So to advance on diminishes those difficulties to access. And then from the demand, there are very gender stereotypes. Some studies have shown us that how really there are lack of educational access to education, to information, and tools that can be like simplification of bureaucracy, the taxes and companies led by women. And we can also close by some recommendations that have already been advanced and approved to foster the suspension and restructuration of debt for women affected by the crisis, with people that have informal work and precarized works. This is how this can be worked with the banks or any other entities. We can plan on how to provide some advances on this sense to promote these credit lines, loans, products, and specific services, grants, and for women, especially for small and medium-sized companies, to open bank accounts, like savings banking accounts. In this sense, I think the pandemic has put into the center how we can have access through facilitating creating some measurements and politics that can advance in this sense. And of course, to develop some financial abilities and to promote savings groups or any other mechanisms with some pair people. I don't know if I have enough time. I would like to continue. The crisis effects have place in certain territories. The changes, the opportunities are not all in abstraction. They are in specific territories. For that reason, the local governments, the ones that are exhibiting the territory, have real an opportunity to contribute to diminish and to provide answers beyond the crisis to the real big inequality in gender inequality. So the local governments are going to provide answers and have provided answers to develop strategies and recovery plans. They have to provide a gender perspective so as to advance as an opportunity to be a leadership and to characterize and foster the participation, solidarity and inclusion and equality as principles that lead to the local economic development. I think this is a politics and ethics opportunity to build cities that can really respond to this crisis, but beyond this crisis, and to collaborate in a structural change as regards gender inequality. Thank you very much. We are available and able to provide answers to any questions that may arise. Thank you very much for so interested in interventions. We have a very gender empowerment for women in the process of this recovery, post-COVID recovery. We will finish this first session with the experiences of how to address the gender inequality in the territories of the pandemic crisis. Now we have another speaker whose name is Nora Bernamarla. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to have an introduction. I don't want to spend time. What you mentioned so far is that the governments, the local governments, are key to answer during this crisis, and then the leaders, the women leaders, are key to be part of projects that will support the reactivation of the economy with equality in the gender aspect. I also would like to mention that we are lucky to have 5 women that are leaders, and they're going to share their experiences, and 4 elect mayors, and 1 leader from a non-governmental agency. I'm going to mention to you that each one of you, please only speak only for 10 minutes. We will tell you when you are 3 minutes in advance and when you are missing 1 minute. We will let you know. Anna will mention you that you have 1 minute left and you have to finish your intervention. So I give the floor to Mariel Fernandez, who is a mayor of Moreno from the province of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Mayor, it's your turn.
¿Está la señora con nosotros? Creo que sí.
Are you here with us? I think you are there.
Ahorita sí. Bueno, bienvenida. Usted tiene la palabra.
Can you hear me? Yes, we can. Welcome. It's your turn. How are you? Thank you. Okay. This is my first mayor term, as in Latin America we say. I come from social movements from Argentina. I belong to Evita movement. I was born in a very humble neighborhood from the municipality of Molina, and my experience was having worked a lot with the community. It was a women fight to be able to be the first mayor in this municipality. And after 3 months, we have this pandemic which affected the world, and this has affected many structural problems that we already had. It was very hard the beginning of the pandemic. We had 4 previous years that were the previous government in Argentina was a neoliberal government. It was very difficult because it was not a type of government that was supporting measurements from the state. There was no investment in health or education, so it was really very hard. So even though in Argentina we already have the popular government, what we got was a country with many complications. And apart from that, we have this pandemic that, of course, we're still facing, undergoing, as all the other territories. And in this moment in Argentina is really very hard. Of course, the most affected people are women. That was really seen during this municipality, that what has to do with the women violence, with this lockdown that was needed, and at the beginning they were more strict. Now in this COVID wave, we are also locked down. What happened is that women were left with their own offenders, let's say. And I would say it was our first government after 3 months on term. It gave us very short time to be able to have politics that could effectively assist to those situations. The maximum we could do was to go home house by house. But at the beginning, we were just tracking the COVID cases. But then also to see what women's situation was like in each house. It was very difficult to talk with them because in situations in which within the house there is someone who is violent, we cannot talk to the women isolated. So at the beginning, it was very hard. We had like 10 women killed. It was really terrible in just a few weeks. We accompanied, at least what I can say is that all these killers are in prison. All the cases had resolution. But the situation was really hard because we didn't have time with all the restrictions through to the pandemic to get together with these women. We had to do many things virtually. At this moment, we are better in that sense because we have 300 promoters against gender violence, and this very short term in which I am already, and we have developed violet points, which means that women are suffering. Women who are suffering violence, they can get close to their neighborhoods to be assisted. And we have been doing more than 3,000 trackings of gender violence. I say the number, but it's terrible. It's a lot. We are tracking these 3,000 cases for gender violence, and we are providing some systems that they have to use it for these ladies. They put a device on their ankles so that they can be tracked down. That is what the situation was. The situation was like when I started at the beginning. The death cases due to death and the COVID cases were kind of matching. Fortunately, we were able to finish with the killing of women so far, but we still have a lot of work to do. And then other politics that we are developing is that the 70% we are women in the most important roles in this area are women, because I think it's important that women are present in power places and roles. Even though I am the mayor, the council president is a woman, and the scholar council is also a woman, and 70% of the people are women. What I must say is that I think that women are better to work with. Since we are all women, we are much better. We are more empathic. We provide resolutions. We are multitasking people. So this is solved by women because we are good at working. And apart from that, there are things that have to do with the structural tasks that have to do with our country regarding economy, because what women need is to work and to have our own income in an autonomous way. So even though it is problematic connected to the concentration of capitalism and the technological advance that is replacing the human work, the workforce that is real by machines, mostly the most affected are the women. There are some tasks that are being discussed in Argentina, like, for example, what it has to do with railways that have been privatized almost for 40 years. This is going to be finalized, and the ports and the rivers in Argentina, the 80% of exportations cannot be controlled yet. The grains in our frontiers, we don't have control of that. There are many economic problems and structural problems that need to be solved and that impact immediately in the food topic and the income and to solve the industrial and the small industry, which generates work. And another thing to bear in mind is the programs, because due to the lack of work in Argentina, we realized that there is like a popular group in which I entered. A speaker was mentioning this. I started this training, let's say. This popular economy had women that are left without a work, and since they have to be the head of the house, they invent a work. A lot is connected with the community centers, caring for a house. That work is not being recognized, so we need that the state recognizes that. And on the other hand, we only have 3 minutes. I will finish. During pandemic moments, one of the discussions that is going on is the fact that even though the state has a responsibility of assisting this lack of work, and in the pandemic context, it was focused on resolving the incomes mainly connected to the, I don't remember the name. It is like universal income per child, and it's working especially with the food. We are requesting as well that it can be worked in income programs, but with work. That is, there's a lot to do in popular neighborhoods in Argentina, which is a place in general. Women are the ones that are the heads of the houses. Organization, they are infrastructure, neighborhoods. So we need to do a strong program with income and work that must be organized from the state. We have some experience, but we think that post-pandemic, this has to be strengthened a lot, so much more. And to finish, I highlight that it's very important that women can continue advancing and having power roles and positions, because it's how to link the politics and the territory. The people that are in the territory are mainly women, and our voice has to be heard there where decisions are taken. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much, Mayor, for sharing your experience and also the fact and your trajectory, how you became a mayor after having participated in social spaces in Argentina. I would like to give the floor to the mayor, Alejandrina Bacaflor, who is a mayor of Boyulbe, Bolivia. It's your turn.
Good afternoon and good morning to the rest of the participants. I'm the mayor of the municipality of Boyulbe in the department of Santa Cruz. For the 4th term now, It's my 17th year as a mayor, and it's a pleasure to be able to represent women in such an important forum where women are also being represented. And the unfair treatment that women have been receiving for years, this is what has brought myself to start participating in politics. And since then, I've been at the service of my society and community. Our municipality has a 70% of women participating in important positions. It's important to distinguish how we are empathic, how we can work in different social aspects. And it's very important to highlight this. I'm now facing my 21st year in my term. And along this time, we have brought a lot of protection, cooperation, and we have made a great effort to be ready to help women at the also national level. In environments where women have been locked down, held with their offenders, whatever their profession was, every woman is taking care of their work, of their family, of their home. And this work, it's a lot of time, not to say every time, either paid or recognized by society. That is why we have to make this question, which are and have been the structural challenges that have deepened gender inequality and also brought back advances in women's rights. I would say that is unemployment, because in our country and also in our city itself, economy flows in a great percentage towards informal commerce. That is why there's a lot of women devoted to ambulatory commerce, and now that they are in isolation, their income has been greatly reduced, and it's very hard for them to bring income to their houses and households. Given the very structure of our country, women don't really have a lot of opportunities and are not represented in decision-making places. That is why unemployment has been one of the greatest subjects. Violence against women have also raised a lot and has had one of the greatest impact in our territory. And women keep on suffering discourage and stress. How the preeminence of men is affecting women here and in every part in the world. Also for indigenous women, women have been subjected for years to their decisions of their partner. So we have to answer the question, what are the measures that municipalities can implement both in political, territorial strategies and alliances for a sustainable local development with gender equality? We have started some actions in the short term. Among them, I can mention at the beginning of the pandemic, for example, we restructured our whole budget, and we destined part of it to provide, since the beginning of the pandemic, with all the restrictive measures and all, to be able to reach the urban and the rural communities. We had the help of this international NGO helping us in the provision of food and materials to several families, both in the urban and rural areas. After that, we also developed an activity during the pandemic, training women from indigenous populations who learned about baking. We gave them the materials necessary to work so that they could start any activity that could help strengthen their families and their income of their households. In the urban areas, we have also worked in different neighborhoods, helping women who were really used to their poverty situation, making bread in a very traditional and artisanal way. So we were able to provide a lot of families, more than 30 families, because this is a small municipality. We provided them with ovens and a lot of supplies so that they could improve and make more profitable their bakeries, the bakery activity. We have also a lot of women working in the agricultural sectors, where we were able to readjust our budget and bring them back, because they already had some structure about this, but to resupply them with some key supplies so that they could restart their production. All of this was made for free just for them. All these women involved in beekeeping that we have helped and that have participated in the measures we've been applying for 16 years now, have seen an improvement that has been quite strong, actually, because they could really take advantage to make some business started from this, because as this supply was so important for them to make some traditional medicines and some of their products, which were also used for improving people's diet, and also people used some of these medicines to improve their COVID symptoms. So they had... Sorry, ma'am. I just wanted to tell you, you just have a few minutes. Hello, I think the transmission has been cut off. You have another 2 minutes to close your presentation. In the dairy sector, we also have an association of women producing dairy products, and we have provided them with all their necessary supplies, also for some women working in agriculture and family crops. And we managed to restructure our central market, which is widely represented by women, and they were able actually to prepare themselves during the pandemic to improve their markets. Also, we have another program where we were able to raise more than $240,000 to help a population of 60% women and 40% men to improve activities in agricultural sectors, beekeeping sectors, and help all these people who were really needing these supplies and help. And I think this will have a great impact in the long term too. We were able actually to improve their infrastructure and economic structure to help women in all these sectors. We have also this center for dairy products in indigenous areas that we have been helping with our programs, and we have also developed a lot of infrastructure so that they can be sustainable, and the women have also access to different programs that can aid them in succeeding in achieving this such necessary sustainability. This is something that we can see in the local media. Our municipality was one of the last actually to import many of these COVID cases. So we were able so far and until then to improve these situations. We could work with many support programs, and we were also able to help people start new entrepreneurship activities so that women could have not only more economic independency in their household and not to be subjected to this violent situation. So that's why I'm saying that the first reason that we need to get to know this situation is because this made us able to support them to improve small producers' situations. And I also consider that because of all the situations are responsible for the fact that I was re-elected for a fourth time. And well, that's all that I wanted to contribute today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, for your contribution today. We will start now with the Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry. The thing is, I was having some connection issues. Thank you very much. Now we will have the intervention of the Mayor of Burkina Faso. She will speak in French.
This is the second mayor in Burkina Faso. She's going to share her experience. I apologize. I took off the camera because my internet has problems.
Excusez-moi, tienen que compartir su presentación, por favor.
Good afternoon. I apologize.
Okay.
I have to share my presentation.
Je pense que vous pouvez commencer.
Can you share my presentation, please?
Ana, ¿cómo estamos con la presentación?
I can start.
Perdón,
Sí,
perdón,
la estoy
perdón.
colocando ahorita. No te preocupes, un absoluto. Disculpen. Un minutito, por favor.
2 minutes, on est en train de la mettre sur... Donc, vous aviserez quand vous voulez changer de diapositive, madame. Oui. On changera la diapositive. Ma collègue Carolina est en train de la mettre sur l'écran. Voilà. À vous la parole maintenant.
Donc, merci.
Maintenant.
Pour avoir merci permet à la commune de
Thank you very much.
à cet échange très enrichissant. Et je suis Madame Konaté Madeleine.
Thank you for inviting me to this enriching debate. I am Madame
dont 36 femmes.
Konati Puni.
Et moi, je suis la deuxième adjointe au
I
maire de la
am
commune de Bobo
a second major, and we are 36 women. I am the second major. Our intervention for this afternoon about the local economic development, sustainability, and durability of them is going to be developed in 4 steps. Please pass the slide.
La anterior, por favor.
We're going to speak at the beginning about the introduction.
L'introduction, les défis, les initiatives et également faire une conclusion.
The challenges, the initiatives, and also I will provide a conclusion. As regards to introduction, the
Par
commune from
nécessité de
Bobo,
résilience et d'absorption,
taking into account all
et
the regions
d'adaptation
from the
également
Mont, suffered all the pandemic
des effets
effects, and due to resilience
les
and
autorités de la ville
adaptation and
ont dû
absorption
s'investir dans la réalisation de
of these
plusieurs actions et
effects, these
activités à
authorities
l'endroit de
from
la
the
population
commune
locale.
had
Et ces
to
actions visaient à
commit
relever les
to the
défis inscrits
realization of
dans
different
le plan
actions
local de
in their local
développement
places. And
communal
these actions
sous forme d'objectifs
were meant to
en vue de maintenir un certain équilibre dans le
face all the
développement
challenges
économique local
in the
sur le
local
genre face
area,
à la pandémie de la COVID-19.
facing and maintaining a certain balance in the development, in the
Et le maire de
as
la
regards the
commune de Bobo
gender
Dioulasso a
and as
souhaité un
regards the
développement
pandemic.
harmonisé de sa ville en prenant en compte
The
toutes
mayor
les
of
problématiques
Bobo
de
commune
développement qui
wanted
constituent des
to
défis à relever.
develop this,
Une
taking into
planification
account all the development
exécution à
problematics that
travers le
constitute
PCD
challenges.
en ses objectifs
One
opérationnels
planning
permettent de les
and
prendre
its
en charge
execution through
annuellement.
the PCD in these
Il y a donc le
operative
financement qui se fait
objectives
à travers le budget
can
communal
be
annuel
performed in an annual
et les
way.
PTS,
So the
les
funds
partenaires
are
techniques
done
et
through
financiers.
the communal
C'est
budget,
ainsi que dans le cadre de
the
la
annual
prise en
communal
charge des
budget,
effets de la
and the
pandémie de la
PTF
COVID-19,
is
l'autorité
in
locale a
the
utilisé les mêmes voies de financement pour donner un levier au
taking
développement économique local.
for this stands for the effects of the
Les
pandemic
défis qui
using
ont
the
accru
same
les inégalités de
funds
genre et ont fait reculer les droits
to
de la
solve
femme.
these problems. The challenges
Nous allons dans un premier temps parler des difficultés de
increased the
mobilisation des recettes
inequalities in the
fiscales
gender area.
pendant la pandémie dans
The
la
women
commune de
rights
Bobo
were
pour des
diminished.
raisons de
First, I'm going
fermeture
to
de
talk
marché.
about the
Et cet état
mobility
de fait handicape
difficulties in
indirectement
the
l'exécution du
community,
budget de
in
la
Bobo
commune
community, due to
ainsi
the
que les
reasons of
activités
the
planifiées
closure
pour
of the
les aider.
markets. This
Et nous avons
state
eu également la réduction des
had also
interventions
to do
des
with the
partenaires financiers
execution of the budget in
médias.
the commune, as well as the planified
Il y a eu la
activities.
réduction
We
de la
also have
mobilité
the
urbaine,
interventions of the reduction
la
of the
mobilité
state
humaine, parce qu'à
and
cette
the
période-là, nous avons tous vécu le
PTF,
confinement.
as well as the
Donc, les gens
human
étaient chez eux,
mobility
il y avait des
reduction.
difficultés pour
During
sortir.
this period, all of
Il y a
us
eu également
suffered
la
this
fermeture des
lockdown, so
marchés
people
qui
had
a
to stay at
impacté
home. They had
négativement
difficulties to
certaines
go out.
commerçantes,
We
dont d'autres
had
ont
the
perdu
closure
leur
of the
capital.
markets,
À Bobo,
and
la
this
plupart des femmes
affected in a
exercent dans
negative
le
way
commerce informel.
certain workers,
Si
and
bien
many of
que,
them lost
pour
their
une petite
capitals.
difficulté,
In Bobo,
généralement,
most of the
les fonds de roulement
women
n'étaient pas
work
assez
in an
élevés.
informal
Pour
way.
une petite difficulté, elles se retrouvent
So
sans
if
fonds
they
de
have
roulement
any
et sont obligées
difficulty,
encore de rentrer à la maison pour rechercher des fonds afin de ressortir.
they are left without this
Dans
fund,
l'existence d'une
and they had
précarité au
to go
quotidien
back to
au
their
sein des femmes.
home to
Il y a eu
look
également les
or get
méventes
out of their homes
enregistrées
to look
au sein
for
des
the
activités
ways of
génératrices de revenus
solving this.
développées par les femmes qui exercent
We
dans
also
la
have a sort of
marchiculture.
precarity
Diapo.
in the activities
Et les
generated
initiatives apportées
to
par les
develop
autorités locales de la commune de Bobo-Dioulasso
their work in the
pour un
farm.
développement local
The
économique
initiatives
avec
that
égalité
were
de genre.
provided by the
Le
local
programme
authorities in the Bobo
il a
community
été programmé
to
en 3
facilitate
étapes, à
economical
savoir le
local
court terme,
development.
le moyen terme et le long terme.
As regards the
Dans ce
gender
qui concerne le court
equality,
terme,
the program was
nous avons la
performed
prise en
in
charge des
3
femmes et des
steps:
enfants
short
en
term, long
situation de
term, and
transit dans la
medium
commune de
term. In the
Bobo-Dioulasso,
short term,
bloquées
we
dans les
have
gares pour absorption de flux
we take
de
care
sa
of the
position
women and
géographique et
children
frontalière.
in transit situations who were blocked in their
Et nous
stations
avons
in
également
order
l'appui de
to
nos
absorb the
partenaires, en
flux of
l'occurrence
their
le PMI
geographic
d'elle
position in
nous
the
a fait un don de
frontiers. We
matériel de
also
lutte
have
contre la
some
COVID-19,
help from
à
our
savoir des
associates,
lave-mains, des gels
PMI
hydroalcooliques, du savon et
and
des
LED,
thermoflash.
that donated some material against
Diapo.
the COVID,
Nous avons la prise
like, for example,
d'un acte
alcohol,
réglementaire pour
soap,
surseoir à la
etc.
perception des
We also
taxes
have
auprès des commerçants dans
a
la commune
reglementary
pour une
act
période de 3 mois.
to have
Cas des
into
femmes de
account the
l'élément noble.
perceptions
C'est comme
of
je l'ai
the
dit plus haut,
taxes
les femmes
for
ici
the
sont dans le
commercial
secteur
people,
informel.
and this
Et
was
ce
done
sont
during 3
des taxes qui
months.
sont perçues au niveau des femmes
The
qui
women
constituent
here is
une
in,
grande
as
partie
I
du budget
told you
communal.
before,
Et nous avons dû
women are normally in
suspendre
the
pendant 3
informal
mois ces
sector,
taxes-là pour
and there
permettre
are a
aux
lot
femmes,
of
en tout cas, de pouvoir
difficulties
vraiment
that have
s'en
to do
sortir.
with the
Il y a eu également l'arrêté portant appui
funds provided by the community. And during 3 months, women had very difficulties in order to survive. And there was also a support for women under difficulties to provide like a reglement and the authority that has to do with this group of women. We also organized some meetings interchanging information with the community leaders and feminist associations and young people. And also we talked about this during the radio, about the COVID situation. We also diminish the effects of the COVID, especially with vulnerable families, with the help that was provided to women through local authorities. During the COVID-19, people had to stay at home, and it was difficult to obtain food. And for this reason, the economic operators, together with the local authorities, made an effort to provide products or some funds to face these COVID problems. In the middle term, to increase the deadlines for the credit debts so that some women had in communal funds, etc. And the community has a fund that can allow women, or some young people and women and families can receive help through this fund so that they can do some activities. And at this level, the mayor wanted to delay the deadlines of the debts that the people had acquired. We also have a place to provide funds in the budget in the community to increase the resilience of the population during the pandemic. And also some musical shows and some funds were provided to these musicians so as to provide more knowledge to the people through songs or sketches to raise awareness. In the long term, maintaining the increase of the Green Brigade formed by women, the mayor from the commune, even though there were some suspensions and some reductions, women you do the cleaning of the cities. They are very young women that are being hired by the community to clean the city. And to conclude, we're going to refer to the pandemic, to the COVID-19, place a lot of difficulty to the local sectors and during the local economic development politics. The initiatives that were developed have permitted to diminish the effects of the pandemic and provide some resilience to the community. I am thankful for letting me participate here. Thank you very much for your experience from Africa. I'm going to speak in Spanish to introduce the following person, who is Amparo Marco, who is the mayor of Castellón. She's vice president of the Ibero-American Network of Municipalities for Gender and Equality. It is your, I give you, it's your turn.
Buenos días. ¿Se me oye?
Good afternoon. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to listen to all your interventions from which we can learn a lot. So thank you very much for letting me be here with you in this roundtable and to be able to learn together due to your experiences in other municipalities. I will congratulate Alejandrina, especially for the fourth election as a mayor in her municipality. So it's an example, to be followed by all of us. All the crises, no matter what type of crisis it is health crisis, economic crisis, wars, whatever, the people, the ones that are affected is always women. Women are always the victims for all the crises. But at the same time, I would like to say that women are the ones that are the core of the growth and the fostering of the reconstruction after a crisis, or at least that's the way we think in Castellón. I'm going to focus on the two questions about which this debate is about. The COVID-19 in Castellón city and also in Spain, it has increased the already existing gaps and inequalities that already existed in Spain. They have increased, for example, employment, 4 points more of unemployment for women in comparison for men in the COVID, and also in poverty of women in comparison to women. The UN data says there are an 11 percentage more of women in comparison to men poor. And also, I want to highlight that there was an overload in the family, and it has been left to women that had to work not only at home, but also in their home, taking care of their families. Women also, has also been mentioned before, they were on first line fighting against these pandemics. The 70% of women were in the sanitary sector. The 70% were women. They were in the supermarkets when they were open, or cleaning. That is a very important sector that was really seen now, and it has always been a invisible sector and normally made up of women, and that's fundamental during the pandemic. Or at hostels or in the commerce, women are really essential in that sector. So they were on the first line, even though they could contract COVID. And also to highlight the worries that we all have of the gender violence when women had to live in the same place of the person that were abusing of them. And I know this has happened also in other countries. But here, what happened is that during the COVID time, there was less general violence than when the alarm time has finished. It seems as if they had the control of the women inside. They had less availability of mistreating them. But now when this has finished, there are more violent cases in our country, unfortunately. And if women were one of the most, let's say, the victims on this pandemic, then as the mayors said previously, we were in front as well. Whether we had resources or not, we were competent or not. And in my city, there were 12.5 that's into the consequences in social economic situations in this city. So 2.5 million of euros were destined in this city, only 600,000 euros in the provision government, and the government from Spain 3.5 million of euros in this city. So the most effort was done towards the ones that we were in front line, providing help, direct help, wherein, as you have heard, as I have heard in previous interventions, that there was no family in Castellón City, and so no family without the protection by the administration that is the closest one. Because when one citizen has a problem, they go to their mayor, to their council. Look, I have this problem. I don't have work. I have this problem of violence. I am overloaded at home. I have a technology problem. This is another topic that was mentioned before. And in this case, we also had another crisis within the pandemic. We had a cybernet attack, which has never seen before in Spain in any administration or any public administration before. We had a cyber attack, so we were requested to pay with bitcoins. We didn't pay. All the documentation was encrypted, absolutely all of it, and there were almost 1 million of documents published in the web. So that was another crisis additional to the sanitary crisis that we had to face in my administration, trying not to affect the public security, especially women that were victims of violence in our neighborhood. So no families were left without any social help because of a cybernetic attack, and not to stop providing support to any citizen from my city. What are our challenges in the future? I think they are exactly the same as the ones that we had before the pandemic. But now we don't start from the beginning, but with less steps. We had to go back more steps. The challenges continue being not to have unemployment. The feminine one is more in comparison to the men. To charge, to have an income of the same, and only a 4% of women have a role in high important companies, not to suffer these chauvinist terrorisms, not to be affected by and to be free. And I say it like this: to be free, to be what we want to be in our life, to be free, freedom, and something important is education to get this, to acquire this. From the moment we are born, we have to educate inequality since the moment we are born, at school and also in the family, within the family. Education is basic to finish all the problems that women face. And the second place, something important that we have to do from all the administrations, no matter what competence we have, is empowerment. Empowerment of women. And I think that we should. This is a very good roundtable to discuss this. This is fundamental. It is a strategic element. It's an ally for women to get this real empowerment and to be autonomous in an economic way, and to fight and to be happy and to be free. All administrations have tools to get it. And also, you have less than 3 minutes. I'm finishing. Also, discrimination in a positive ways, as I heard previously, generating employment to promote companies made up of women, self-employment by women, like a positive discrimination in all the politics that can be made, and to contribute from the different contexts so that this equality exists between men and women. And from our administration, we have some examples. For example, the municipality funds are fundamental to get that equality. You can do some equality politics using the municipality funds, or from urbanism. That is, the house for everybody. The city is the house for everybody with a gender perspective, so they are safe for women, and we can live with our families in equal way. And we can also provide direct help to generate employment, to create companies, to facilitate credits. For example, when hiring in Castellón administration, we give importance employment for women in those types of works which were more done by men. So we really highlight hiring women in this city, and we are generating 9 million of euros in investment as well, and more about so in the European environment, so that women can be standing where they want to be standing, or also to value equality plans, to the access to, for example, credits. Lately, we had provided 5 million euros in which we have provided that the financial companies have taken into account the gender equality or equality plans within their own public administrations. And to end in Castellan, I am very proud as being a mayor. And I like to emphasize this because since Mayor was the first mayor, I was also the first one in 8 centuries of history of this city. I am the first mayor of the city. And with that, opening that door, we were able to have the first president in the commercial chamber, the first director in Castellón, the first director in the Castellón port, the first sub-delegate from the government of Spain, and the first chief in the city of Castellón. So empowerment of women is opening doors for other women because we are free.
Thank you very much. And with that words, I really want to thank all the mayors who have made their presentation so far. And I want to congratulate them for their great work. And I'd like to give the floor now to a different person who's also very important in the community in Livingstone, in Guatemala, Miss María Teresa Rodríguez Brandón, Director of the Fundación Guatemala and the coordinator of the Women Network for Latin America and the Caribbean. Maite, the floor is yours. You are such in a beautiful place. Yes, the place is great. I wasn't able to be there right now because, of course, the restrictions and all. But it's a great pleasure for me, and I really want to thank you this chance to participate here in such an important event. And as usual, I'm in charge of the coordination of this fair, so I want to be very brief, but we are working within the Dominican Republic and in Latin America and the Caribbean. Actually, the program that inspired our initiative emerged actually in Chile and also in Argentina. So we wanted to build upon these safe cities initiatives that you already implemented. We wanted to address the use of time of women, their access to basic services, the climate change issue, the reduction of urban risk. We have also addressed this category very recently, actually. And we also have very strong links with other organizations to work on risks and violence as a social risk, right? So we are learning how all these topics are actually interrelated. And as regards alliances, I really want to make a comment on the very strong alliance that we have with global networks such as the Viral Commission, the Habitat Organization, the Platform for City Rights, and we are part actually, and we created a new global platform for women. We activated for the achievement of this urban agenda, And we've been working in territorial experiences to reach all these communities as a territorial approach for community development. And we have also participated with the UCLG. As you all had a lot of plans before the COVID-19 pandemic, action, in-person forums, and we had the chance now to start working virtually and start reducing this digital gap. So we got together to create 3 different Latin American forums with the presence of different speakers from countries such as India, who stated how to strengthen different media available to solve these issues, also from Spain, in order to work with cooperation, how Spain is working within their territory to help women creating employment, social protection. And also we took the task in these forums to bring an answer, actions from territories, different projects, and also the political planning of different measures. And all of this emerged from a local perspective, actually, which I will refer to again when we speak about local experiences. While also we made a lot of emphasis on our work so that the local governments, civil organizations and women could start working on the consumption network. That was key to start different initiatives in cities and urban areas, and not so as not to be with our arms crossed before these problematics, such as access to water. Maybe you had to wash your hands, but you couldn't use any water whatsoever. So we had to start a cooperation, a system, because we cannot say there's a post-pandemic now. We are still working on the pandemic. In a different forum, we were speaking about how the households also faced different crises and how this pandemic arrived and stayed, and how we were affected by this to work on all these different processes. With everything that everyone has illustrated during this day of work, since the beginning of the pandemic, there are some subjects that have been really important and highlighted during the whole day. One of these is violence, all kinds of violence and strategies that were used to start working to approach this. Then we were working on work, social protection, the digital gap, and in this case, I will refer to resilience. And if I can now share my screen with you, I would like to introduce you to an experience that emerged from a local level and has to do with how the pandemic was approached in that specific moment and what strategies were there to give a community response to women issues and to work on the different topics that were brought to the table, and how women had a very important role in the recovery of the economic problems that we were faced with. Now I'm having some issues with this computer and to share. I don't know if you can help me maybe to go to the next slide. I think it's, yes, we can share it from here if you give us just a moment, Maite. Okay, now I think I can see it. Thank you very much. So we are sharing our screen now. Oh, yeah. We had a very important participation in what was the local development agency for women and food security. What we understand for food systems in cities, they were traditionally understood as production systems for food, commercialization, and manufacture. If we take this into account, their rights, their systems for networking, for production, there's much need.
This experience, we can see the next slide. This experience of the school. Can you change the slide, please? This is the next slide, please. The next. Yes, that one. Here we have the school started.
Realmente porque no hubo otra pensum al respecto que consultamos, fuimos pues elaborándolo, trabajamos muchísimo en sala virtual con 30 alumnas precisamente en Livingston porque la conectividad es pésima, ¿verdad? Pero las mujeres, las otras lideresas que se vincularon son lideresas que participaron en los otros foros. Si le damos, por favor.
Le queda 3 minutos, Maite.
Sí, muy bien, muy bien. Voy a caer bien. Bueno, ¿qué resultados logramos con esta intervención muy de nivel de base? Formamos a 83 mujeres lideresas, rompimos con la brecha digital porque, bueno, entonces muchas mujeres de varios espacios en México o alumnas en El Salvador, en todo el resto de la República de Guatemala, usando tecnología para el aprendizaje en sistemas alimentarios. Fue un punto de encuentro para un número considerable de mujeres, redes fortalecidas, y eso fue muy importante durante el huracán ETA y OTA. La escuela se estaba realizando directamente durante época de huracanes también, o sea, se volvió un escenario muy complejo. La Red Mujer y Hábitat, como digo, salió muy fortalecida por poner este pensum en vigencia, que ya es está usándose en otros procesos. La siguiente lámina, bueno, ahí pueden ver ustedes que además de lo que fue proceso teórico, hubo un proceso práctico. Esto es Livingston, ¿verdad? Entregamos cajas agrícolas porque las mujeres pues no poseen mucha tierra para siembra, pero si pones la próxima que puedas dar, la próxima diapositiva, ahí pueden ver ustedes que ya los productos son jardines urbanos propios, y la idea también pues es que las mujeres tienen las prácticas de resiliencia en plena vigencia, ¿verdad? O sea, lo que era antes un sitio baldío se convirtió en un espacio para producción de alimentos. Y si pones la próxima, porque la última esta, ¿sí? Hacia ahí está. Decir entonces que ya tenemos propuestas ante el gobierno local. Las mujeres están planteando, de hecho, 30 jardines urbanos de seguridad alimentaria en ese municipio, como un municipio modelo para el resto del país. Quiero decir que esto también pues, fue parte de lo que ha sido el plan 3R en Centroamérica y República Dominicana, el plan de recuperación, reconstrucción y resiliencia.
From Republic Dominica, the recuperation program to reconstruct and resilience in which we have worked, the G3, developing sustainable and also informal. We are not creating or invented something. I want to say that we have combined different processes and different topics during this pandemic. And I think that this is a very illustrative example in which women manifest their interest or necessity in a collective web and their incidence as a politics in order to achieve that this food security is a topic, as the FAO and the United Nations says, is a topic for the next decade. So this is a way, that is an interesting way to advance. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would like to thank the 5 women all the leaders that shared your experiences. And would like to highlight that you can see that there are some common topics that I'm going to mention very fast. Municipality funds, urbanism, face in direct help to women, and leader women that are in the center of the government, in the local governments, because you can do the change there. No more to say, and to wish you all the best. I will give the floor to Anna. She will give the last things because we had to do some change as regards the next part of the event. Thank you all. Thank you all. I am we're going to have a 5-minute break so that you can stretch your legs and to start think about everything that has been said. And we will now work more in a dynamic way to think and everything in the field. So we have 5 minutes as a break, and when we come back, we will explain our dynamics, how it's going to be. Thank you very much.
Volvemos otra vez con vosotras y vosotros. Vamos a dar comienzo a
We are back now. We will start with this new section of the session. We will start with the work panel. So I want to give the floor to my colleague from Segovia. Where we will have now a conversation, a dialogue that where we would like to share proposals, strategies. We want to focus in how we move forward now, how this crisis will advance and progress, and how we will take the advantage of the experiences of such great people, their knowledge, their experience, how they lived through these times and these challenges. We want to share the local experiences so that every participant can think and also provide their own ideas to contribute to women autonomy. So the question is the next one. Before these challenges, what sectors, what interventions and strategies are a priority for a sustainable local economic development? What factors, what environments and sectors should we focus on to advance, and how do we see the leadership of local actors in this intervention process? That will be like the general question that we want to open and give you the floor to share your experience and knowledge. We can also make commentaries on the chat so that we can make a reflection all together. So the floor is all yours.
Me gustaría añadir que la señora Konaté puede intervenir.
I would like to add that Ms. Konaté can also intervene if you want to start the translation for you to speak. Anyone dares to start the conversation?
Olga. Sí, adelante. Perfecto. Escuchamos.
Go ahead. Perfect. We hear you. If everyone that intervenes can introduce themselves. My name is Damara Riz. I'm from Nicaragua, and I am the regional director of the program DIREFE, which works as Sweden Cooperative Center. To answer your question, Olga, and taking the contribution of the previous presentations, which I think they all provide a complementary vision of how to recover in a more equal way and dealing with how local governments can play a different roles together with civil social organizations. I think there was a key aspect, which is women empowerment. A lot of times at the local level, we speak about empowerment from an economic point of view, and I think that's great, but we also need a comprehensive vision to deal with empowerment, because it's been demonstrated already that economic empowerment from a mere income viewpoint, it's incomplete. We need to work on, of course, the topics we spoke about, gender-based violence, how women have a transformative power in this respect, organized women, and all of this needs to be taken into account so as to speak about a more comprehensive empowerment for women, where women have an important role but not the only one. And also speaking about the diversity of women and inequalities that we can observe now. For example, from our organization, we are working with rural indigenous women, and it's where inequality gaps are actually widened. So how local governments can have and implement policies that are particular and specific for this type of inequality based on our skin color, sexual orientation, ethnic origin, etc. So that's what I wanted to start with. Thank you very much. A great start, Damarit, with a series of approaches of how we see this, that the change is really important and radical. It's a change in paradigms that requires us to see beyond approaches, strategies, and knowledge.
No, dale,
Maite now. I don't know if Nora had the floor, if she wanted to. I agree actually with Damaris. I'm in Guatemala. She's in Nicaragua, so we share a lot about the region. I think that's exactly like that. What we all need to do at this moment is to focus on community measures and in women community specifically. This emerges from a need that we can identify in the place. We are a city which is mainly based on touristic activities, for example, and the city is now closed. So we have a lot of issues. There's places where there's no water, no roads, people have nothing to eat. So we have a very important collective of women right there, whom we have started to work before in agriculture. This was a pre-pandemic program. We were distributing seeds, knowledge, and we started a quick training for fertilizers in a moment where no one could enter the city. No food was entering the city, because if anything was coming from outside, the view was that the virus was also coming in. So this put them in a different place. If they had had no other means to exercise their participation, to exercise their powers, we would have been in a whole different situation of extreme poverty. So if we can have resources reach women's hands from different organizations with different NGOs, international NGOs, if we could make these resources available to them, the results are completely different. That's what I can say, what changed radically in the empowering process in our territory. This empowerment was actually real. We work with women in different networks with the shafting system, which we also were inspired by India to implement. The implementation system used in Africa, there were a lot of different systems, different from just producing, commercializing. They were focused on a lot of different aspects. Now we will give the floor to Alejandrina. Did you want to participate? Of course, Ms. Vasca-Flor, you go first, and then I'll take my turn. I'd like to tell you that I started my term in 2010, and there was a term right in the middle where we have already started reconstruction, then the pandemic started, and the capacity for women to work on their leadership. We were asked to restart that from the municipality, and we help women start their business, their commerce. And they started all of this without any payments until we finished this third wave of the pandemic. So I agree, because from this end we have been working with different programs in the short term with a gender approach, with a gender perspective, which I think should be included in every project that we are to implement. Why? Because the viewpoint now is to work on food security. That's where I want to make a special focus on, for women to be part of these projects, also in matters of training, proactive capacity, so that women can develop other skills and capacities that will allow them to generate income for their family. We also work with an NGO called Natura, which also helped us in providing plants for home crops, so that women could also have that very important supply of food and of a varied diet to be helpful during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we have also a different approach. Before, poorer municipalities like us were focusing on work and on other perspectives, but now, currently, we are focusing more on women. It's not only food for work, it's technology for work. So if women have abilities and skills in different aspects, they won't only be given work and food. They will be given technology and a lot of resources to have a new approach in this program. It's a very important work that we have been developing lately, and in long-term projects that we have focused in the long term, especially to benefit women. Also with some help from the central government, and somehow also at the regional level, providing network, providing infrastructures. So I think it's very important for us to train women to improve their conditions to face this pandemic. And ourselves as women, we have to keep up our efforts in facing these problems, protecting our children, our young people, etc. Nora, you have the floor now.
Thank you for the interventions. I would like to make a summary of what I have seen. It's not a summary, it's more or less what I wanted to say. What Damaris Almighty said, you can see the importance of the civil society supporting women, groups. What Bacalflor mentioned, the importance of the local governments. And what I wanted to say is that if I come back to the question, what sectors of intervention in politics can be led by the local governments and the local actors? I think that none of the two can work together. We need to have some interventions in which we see a local government that represents in reality the communities, and for that it's important that all the discussions, for example, what was mentioned by the mayor from Castellón, the municipality funds to bear in mind the gender equality, also the situations for COVID in which there is violence. For instance, if a woman is walking in a street without light, she would be even more scared now than some months or years ago. Also, to support the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurs. For example, in Bolivia, there are many municipalities that have local economic development offices which support women, and also a space to ask questions. I am mixing the languages, consulting the women from the municipalities. The change starts in the local area. It's important to have a national government and the politics necessary, but day by day it's done in the local sector. And the role of the municipality is to support those groups that need diverse support, whether it be with funds or training or entrepreneur. So I wanted to say that, to me, the experience that I have by working in Bolivia, I worked in Nicaragua as well, also in Guatemala. I know Livingstone. I worked in Guatemala with people from different sectors. So I think it's important to work with the base, with women, with the women organizations, but it's important to involve the local government, because the structural change is going to be able to be done with a change at that level, not only on the base. We can do a lot on the base, but we must have a structure that sustains those changes. That's what I believe. Thank you very much, Nora. I think you have done a great summary of what we need to continue discussing. I give the floor to other opinions or to address these topics. What areas, what we see the local leadership like. We know and we have seen through the evidence how local governments have been demanded. The mayors were the leaders in many cases, in many countries. So I think that is our debate now. We have Victoria that can speak now. We listen to you, Victoria. I think we have to provide the audio to Victoria.
Ya se lo habilitamos, Olga. Un segundo, por favor.
Perfecto, ahora sí.
The audio is going to be enabled. Thank you. Good afternoon. Just to come back to what Nora was saying, she made me think about this structural transformation. And coming back to the topic, I introduced myself. I am in charge of coordinating the university network for gender equality in the University Union in the Latin America and the Caribbean. It is a gender network in Latin America, so I can mention the universities like key players to think about facing this crisis. Some of the panelists and the mayors mentioned this importance of educating in equality and for equality. In that sense, universities have a key role in this task of educating as part of this structural change and necessary that Nora was mentioning earlier. And apart from the important tasks in the pedagogical way that universities have to educate in equality and for equality, I think about the importance in the territories to which they belong to, the importance of the extension activities that can be done at universities in their territories, accompanying them in the difficult situation they are going through. And I was also thinking, by listening to the mayors, as regards the differences in the situations in the different countries and places, we are, with the coordination of this network, we have, even in our Latin American region, we see the heterogeneity of situations as regards violent situations, for example. And I think in a global way or global way, how this heterogeneity and diversity gets even more complex. So I think it is very important to interchange experiences, to enrich ourselves, and to give important pieces of advice to the countries that are in situations with more vulnerability. So I think universities have a key role. No question about that. Training and education are key. In a sense, as we were saying, we need, and we are going to the structural change. We hope it is positive, even though we are going through many difficulties and challenges. We can move forward in all the topics that we are interested in. I think Vaca Flor wanted to speak. Let's see. Alejandría Vaca Flor.
Creo que se le paró la conexión.
Hola.
I think she has lost connection.
No,
Hi.
compañera, solamente que estaba analizando sola, de repente hice unos movimientos, lo que hablaba la anterior.
I was I was just thinking about what the previous speaker was saying. So I think Larissa wants to speak now. We listen to you. Thank you, Olga. I think we also can talk about training of the local governments, the key they have in Iberoamerica. We focus our work on training of administrative people and also to interchange good practices. Working in the gender area in the last years is that, especially in Latin America, is a necessity that public workers, not only technicians from the equality area, but all the areas of the municipalities are trained and with enough skills in the gender perspective, because when we do some trainings, they are only focused on strengthening the leadership for women and also focused on people who work in the women institutes of certain places. But we forget that it's also necessary that in the economic area is trained on gender perspective or approaches. Also the security area, especially, to be trained on gender equality. So from the oil, we are trying to sensibilize people so that this training is not only is given to the equality perspective, but also in a general way to all the sectors that work in the municipalities. I think that you are talking about something really important, because the idea is how we plan, how we conceptualize a perspective, a gender perspective in development. many years or many places, we have understood to have specific units linked to the women problem when it's actually it's something holistic. So in that sense, planning and the planning offices, funds, they have to have this type of look. It has to be something more holistic. I think it is an important advance what your institutions and other institutions are doing, really to put in the center the gender perspective in the governance and the planning, the local planning, to make changes that can be sustained throughout time, and they are deep enough. I think the planning is something we have also seen some advances on some places, but of course we have to deepen this advance as well. Do you have any comments, any questions in the chat? Any other comments you would like to add? Or you would like to share anything?
Bueno, yo quisiera poner un punto que tal vez es uno de los ámbitos que me parece
I would like
que son muy relevantes
to say something that I think is probably not very relevant in the sense that how to deal with the proposals or the lines of work, which has to do with the care, more seen as a responsibility at home, and also how to care people. But not that, but in a different way, how to value the social reproduction. I think that in our country, in our city, our territories, we had a trajectory so that the social reproduction of the social life was not the development center. And I think that we are debating this, and it's very important that we can advance in that area. Are there any? There are some proposals that are very interesting, like in Bogota, that they are already implemented a program about integral care services that take into account, for example, like a block of care. I think it is a territory of 800 meters by 800 meters, something bigger than a block, to implement services, to have training, to do some entrepreneurship. So I think it would be interesting if we could talk some minutes about how you see the challenges as regards the care, on taking on the perspective that it goes beyond a relationship that has to do with the economic autonomy for women, which is something that has been, and I agree, is fundamental. All the empiric evidence and research show that if there is an overload of the women care, so they have a restriction to be autonomous, like free of participating or getting training. So there is this type of relationship. However, the care topic on our perspective goes beyond just linking it to the economic part. How we can see in the local development an approach or a view that takes into account the social reproduction and life as a fundamental point for the development. I just leave this as a comment to see whether someone can mention something about this.
Damaris, me parece que quería hacer una pregunta o un comentario.
I think Damaris wanted to add some comments. Yes, I want to say something, maybe a type of proposal, because I think it is a different area. I think that something very important, it is something important that generally we don't see so much in the development plans in the local sector. And I think that it's important to understand what the type of care is and the place it has in the social reproduction, and to recognize they are not fairly under the responsibility of women. It's unfair that women are the ones that have to guarantee and recognize their value. something that you said, the right to take care of and being taken care of. We are promoting some initiatives for care in the countries in which we have presence, connected to the care networks that exist in those countries. And it's very interesting because those initiatives are done in the rural area. Sometimes the communities, they want care initiatives more for children. But why? Why the communities and women mainly, they choose the children care because they feel that they don't have where to leave their children. If, for example, they actively integrate an empowerment economic initiative. So the care is an obstacle so that women can empower themselves and play an active role that is not only the reproductive role in this society. So in that sense, I think that it's fundamental to the concentration of this. I think Nora mentioned this before, to see the concentration between the different players. If the organizations that we provide support could coordinate with the local governments in the municipalities where we are, probably the impact of those care initiatives could be even bigger. But the thing is that we are working without articulation in the local level. And I also want to add that sometimes the care have a more groupal view, more for the city. So it's important that we start adding in the narrative, and when we debate about the care, rurality, and the situation of indigenous women, Black people that live in these situations. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Any other comment or question or anything you want to add? I think there are none. Nora, I just wanted, I think the public consultation is a process that is being done in Canada at the municipality level, and I think that we have tried to do this in some projects in IT, in which the idea of reinforcing the municipalities was due to recognizing from the population to the municipality as an important entity. My internet, I see that I am having issues with my internet, so if I stop talking, it's because of that. I think that we have to think about all of this in a public consultation paradigm as a part of the public politics that any municipality could have in order to assist all the necessities, because it's another way of coming back to some topics that we don't know much about. It's a way of getting together and going towards the same objective, towards the local economic development and gender equality of everything we have been mentioning before. Maite? Well, since you have said most of the things that I wanted to say, I think that is a critical moment in which we are. At this moment, we are in the gender equality that will take place in Paris. This movement was very interesting. We participate in the global coalition in safe places and inclusive for women and children, girls, as one of the leaders of the equality in gender. So we feel that there are many bureaucracy. Just we understand that it has to be administered by the institution, but women, and that implies that we have different acting parameters, because we would have loved that these processes were more dynamic. To say that the virtuality has helped us a lot so that more women could be linked to this. If not, imagine the number of women would have been more reduced in Mexico more, but more in Paris. And I think that we have to revisit these processes to see in the end. Now in 13th of June, we have the Paris event, but how can we start working on this so that we can have some practical action to the Beijing platform, which is what we are getting back today? That's a comment. So we can deepen on this. I think this is an important agenda for women that work in the municipality level. We are entering there to say that women in the municipality or leaders, we have many points in common, and we can apply this to the holistic platform, leading towards that. I think it is very important to articulate and talk about all these thematics and to link them according to the demands and the big objectives that are being arisen. As Maite said, the local development, the territory, the community, the leadership is a topic that I feel is getting even stronger and getting more visibility in this crisis moment. It is in the territory where you can see the demands, so that is where you have to look for the answers, and the answers are going to have a lot of importance in the following decades. What lines, what actors, what articulations are we going to use to solve this? And also the political leadership for women is important in the sense that I think it's very important to have had the possibility to share with the mayors who have a lot of challenges and responsibility. A lot is being played there. And how we can link all this with the international forums that are taking place or going to be take place. So to provide more debate apart from the local places but more dealt with in a global way. Anything else that you would like to add? Any comment? Vaca Flor, would you like to? Yes, and Iriana Ferreira as well. Perfect. Hi.
I also wanted to tell you about, as you were just saying, within this topic that you are bringing to different global forums, how we can also include the political issues in every country. Like our case here, 10 years ago, we didn't even have legislative issues dealt with. We didn't have any participation practically, and we weren't actually allowed to have all these revisions during the presidency of Evo Morales. We could actually manage to have some variety in electoral achievements, both in electoral and executive positions. So even only from a few years from now, we can actually say that we have more representation. Than there's been a lot of more in transformations towards women benefits in public policy. But in issues that have to do with subnational aspects, here, for example, with me as a mayor, there are not many cases. We have 55 mayors, and only 5 of us are women in the whole department. So that somehow also is an example of our underrepresentation. In the legislative bodies, there are both men and women, because that's, of course, something that it's demanded by law. But we have to still work on that from Bolivia, so that women from that sector too can also participate in annual budgets, in different projects, and also in bringing those budgets towards more gender issues. We have a center for the care of children so that women can work. We have two in our most close community and also here in our very own municipality, and they bring and provide all different kinds of attention that women might need, and that supports women in this recovery. We have also provided a profile for these times of pandemics to work on different cases like gender-based violence, and they have provided help. So we have to be there taking care of our women who are suffering family violence and violence at their households. So it's very important to have this work from our end. It's so much work, even from our municipality level. So we can all work together and start helping women achieve different activities, develop different activities, and have some economic independence. Thank you very much. Now, Ariana Ferreira, that will be the last intervention. We will close, and you have the floor now. Thank you very much. My name is Iriana Ferreira. I am from Villa Dolores, in Tras la Sierra, Córdoba. Oh, how beautiful. Yes, I'm an independent professional. I assess politics, policies, and different strategies, and I want to raise this query that I keep asking myself. In these conversations, most of us are women. I think 98% or 99% of us are women. And that is very concerning because it seems like the equity issue concerns only women. Women are the only who worry about these conversations, which also deal with different planes, not only exclusive to women. So it looks like the conversation is only for women. So we have still a lot to do and a lot of work ahead of us to include other actors in gender issues, to have a greater diversity of actors, also thinking about I'm sorry, I got a little bit lost. But what I was saying, it's very important. Sometimes there are women who don't even see this problem of inequality. We are all women. Some women don't even see the problem, and there are no men sharing the conversation with us. So it could be something that local governments can work on to include more diversity in these dialogues and conversations related with gender and equity issues. No doubt, it's a long way. We have made some improvements, but we need a lot of more work, a lot of more promotion in cultural terms across all levels, because the problem of inequality is a problem of the society. It's not a problem of women only. Many of us are very committed to this initiative, but there's a lot more to be educated, to be promoted. And I hope we are successful, but it's a structural and a systemic issue. I will make a very brief closing for our debate. I thought first, I wanted to thank you. All your interventions have been very clear and rich. For example, how you were speaking about comprehensive empowerment, not only in the economic level, but also for leadership, for every aspect in society, is a topic that is key to really understand this perspective. Women, we all have different characteristics. We participate in different sectors, and we are in the most vulnerable sectors with less possibilities. So there's a lot to work to really achieve local development in this sense. community work, different projects in collaboration with communities, as Alejandrina was saying, etc. There's a lot of leadership work that needs to be strengthened with local governments. Also, what we were speaking about, educating for equality at the university level. Creating a university network in this sense is actually very interesting because participating in governability, here also in this sense, it's very important to work from a gender perspective. Also in urban and also rural territories, it's a topic that we need to get deeper and deeper on. And what finally Ileana raised as an issue is that this is not only a women issue, it's for all our society. It's been a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm closing my intervention now. So Ana, now I want to see what you want to say. Well, listening to all of you has been a great learning experience, and we know there's a lot of work to do still. Now I want to give the floor to Mariana Stefe, who will make the closing for this session today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Ana. A lot has been said so far. There's not much to add. But after such a long day of work, I wouldn't like to end this session without thanking for the great work that Carolina, Ana, Olga have done, Guillermina, everyone, the technical team, so that we can all be here today with all the weekly meetings that we have had and celebrated. The different universities also that have taken part in the organization of today's session. And of course, we want to thank the University of Avellaneda for trusting us and entrusting us with such an important task. So first, the diagnosis you've presented, Guillermina, Aroa, and Olga at the beginning, there's no doubt as regards the situation of inequality. We are now in a much more unequal world than at the beginning of 2020. So, to bring that back, there were some elements during the debate that Olga just mentioned, but I want to reconsider how we can bring more people to the conversation, not to make this an issue exclusively for women. In the case of Argentina, there are many instances where different organisms and bodies are forced to incorporate gender perspectives and be trained on this. And of course, this is a work that has to do with violence and even more extreme cases of inequality, access to health. So I think it's key that we are able to incorporate a cross-sectional perspective so that, as Ileana said, I think that was her name, not to turn this into a women ghetto where the same people keep on having the same conversation all over again, so that we don't only incorporate a gender perspective, but that we also incorporate in the conversation male participants speaking about care, work, and also in dealing with economic areas, university training. And without resources, it's very difficult to really achieve this structural transformation across the different levels, of course. It's the territories that know much better the situation, and we need this articulation, this cross-sectional articulation with different areas of the government, but also in the different levels of government, regional, national, etc. We need to think about sustainable economies with gender inclusion along the time. I think it's central, both axes that we were working on today, this technological revolution that we were speaking about, that it's not a neutral one, that is not a revolution without a gender perspective. As many of you already said, the technological revolution, it's something we have already submerged on. It's not recent. So in this sense, we can be very aware to this polarization that emerge from the different changes that we are seeing. And of course, care work, the administration of this care work, how informal that work is. Whatever we are speaking about, in Spain, in Guatemala, in Argentina, everywhere, care work is feminized, is undervalued, is under-recognized, and we have to work a lot to bring this forward. So from an education organization perspective, which is my role, there's a lot to do when thinking about the future of the labor market. And we need, for that, an important articulation with other levels of government to create the territories that we want and deserve, more democratic, more fair, more just, more equal for everyone. So I don't want to take more of your time. It was a super long session. I want to congratulate every of the panels. This was the first day of many workshops and roundtables that are to come in the next days. You can register in the World Forum website. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else. We still have a lot of topics to keep on meeting and debating on. We cannot do that all in a few hours, but thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great one. Thank you.